It was really quite an experience growing up in this area. You have a lot of different cultures that are coming together. I remember in school, we have a variety of different ethnicities, different people, so I got to learn a lot about different cultures. There also is the aspect with San Marino has the stigma of it being a dangerous city, and it is true. There is quite a crime rate and then drugs, but I think it's more up to the individual and trying to stay away from those sorts of negative aspects and trying to do something positive for your life. My parents were real strict with me and encouraged me to focus on school and study hard to reach my full potential. So that's one of the reasons I stayed away from gangs. I also saw some of the negative aspects that happened to some of my peers and relatives who had gotten involved with drugs and gangs. Where I grew up at, we had some basketball courts across the street, and there was a field, and oftentimes we would go there and play basketball or do some kind of sport. And we had to be careful one time because we were out there playing, and usually there was a group of guys who would play. There were two different levels in the court. There was lower level and upper level, and we would basically play wherever we could find a court, open court. But one time we were there playing, and apparently somebody found out that their enemy was playing basketball. So they came by and started shooting, and we had to duck down because we didn't want to get shot. So this is where I grew up at, and I remember that big rock right there. My uncle and my father were digging a hole because they had to fix this line, and they found that big rock, and even today that big rock is still there. Things always change, but you never forget where you come from. That always stays with you. I was always getting into fights at school. People would pick on me, so my parents wanted me to learn how to defend myself, in case, because when you're at that age, most boys are always fighting and challenging each other. So instead of taking guitar lessons, I ended up going into karate, and I was in it for about 3.5 years, and I actually obtained my first degree black belt in Tang Soo Do karate. I always kept that a secret. I didn't want people to know I was in karate because I always feared that somebody would want to challenge me or see what I knew if I could really defend myself. I did use it a few times. I had to use it to defend myself. Luckily, it wasn't anything too serious. And I remember that we would sometimes go to karate tournaments over in San Diego County. It was a really, really fun time, and got to meet a lot of different people. And it was also unique in that it was at Norton Air Force Base, so everybody there was in the military, affiliated with the military. So I got to also see that aspect of life. So I took karate at this building here. It's called the Galaxy, when it was a part of Norton Air Force Base. And took classes, actually, it was up on the second floor. But it was a pretty good facility. They had punching bags and kicking pads. And, it was like your own little, like I said, it was like your own little dojo, your own little environment. They really instilled like self-discipline and how to use your mind to just sort of understand how things are going, just not only with fighting, but just life in general. I attended Aquinas High School, which is also in San Marino, and graduated from San Marino High School in 1998. Well, I was interested in two distinct fields, politics and science, and I was able to attend California Golden Boy State, and what that is, gives they select high school students, and it gives you a practical operation of how government works. I also was able to attend the National Hispanic Youth Initiative in Biomedical Research and Policy Development, and I went to Washington, D.C., and I was real fortunate. I was able to visit institutes such as the National Institutes of Health and other agencies within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. But I have to say that the major turning point was when my grandfather fell ill. He suffered a stroke and was critically ill in the hospital. And I remember we would always go and visit him, and just seeing the different equipment, different tests they would run, seeing them analyze different data, I was enthralled by that process. And after being involved with all that for the time he was sick, that really cemented my desire to pursue a career in the medical field. So I ended up getting involved with Loma University. Dr. Marino de Leon had a program at the time called the RAMP Research Program, and it was for high school students in the area who were invited to do research for a summer. So I did research in the lab in 1997 and 1998, and I was able to see firsthand the scientific process, what types of cutting-edge technology were being performed, and I really was excited about this process. And when I applied to college, I found out about a program called the National Institutes of Health Undergraduate Scholarship Program. And what this program is, they select students based on their academic record and their desire to become a biomedical research scientist. And they invite you to go to the NIH for 10 weeks. You work in a laboratory, and then you get to do different workshops for career development. And the really nice part about it is that they provide up to $20,000 in support for your education as an undergrad. I was one of 2 high school students selected for the scholarship, which normally they give it to undergraduates who are at the junior or senior level. So I was real fortunate in that I hadn't even set foot in a college lecture hall, and I already had this wonderful opportunity. And that was because of the program through Dr. De Leon doing research at Loma Linda as a high school student. So once I got to the NIH, I was just fell in love with research. We had Dr. Francis Collins, who at the time was the director of the Human Genome Project, and he came and gave a lecture to us, and I still remember one of the quotes he said, "We treat the symptoms of diseases and not the actual disease itself." So when I heard that, I thought that I would really be happy and passionate about pursuing a career in biomedical research. I also had come to Loma Linda University in the summer of 2002 to do a research program for the summer. And just when I saw the quality of research and the questions, I really wanted to pursue a Ph.D. I really wanted to get trained. The Ph.D. really trains you really well for doing research, how to think like a scientist, how to analyze data, interpret data, and design experiments. And I thought that would be the best option for myself. Osteoporosis poses a major public health threat with 6 million fractures occurring annually in the United States. And according to the NIH, 1 out of every 2 women and 1 out of every 4 men will have an osteoporosis-related fracture sometime in their lifetime. So with this data in hand, there's an important need to address this problem of osteoporosis. Recently, there's mounting evidence that oxidative stress depletes important antioxidants in bone and activates bone cells, which can resorb bone and cut up bone faster than bone's being formed, and it inhibits bone formation. So although we know that this is happening, the molecular mechanisms of this process is not well understood. So what I'm currently doing in my project is we're focusing on this gene called glutaredoxone 5, or GRX5, and it was identified to be highly expressed in bone, and currently there is no known function in bone. They have an idea of what it may be doing in other systems, such as yeast, but as far as in the mammalian system, there really aren't any studies about it.
Gabriel's work in the last 3 years has been focused on how this gene works in bone cells and how it protects bone cells from oxidative stress. This is a very important area of research because we know very little about the effect of oxidative stress with age in bone, although it's a very important causative factor for osteoporosis.
And we're just trying to see what signaling molecules are being affected by GRX5, how it's protecting against this bone loss. And the hope is to identify important molecules and use these as therapeutic targets to help treat osteoporosis in the future. So a lot of the work we do is involved with cell culture experiments where we either knock out a gene or overexpress a gene. So it's important to have a good system for growing cells. So what we use is a incubator, and it mimics physiological conditions. It's at 37 degrees and has a 5% carbon dioxide. And usually we keep our cells growing here. And we do a lot of experiments in a cell culture hood. And we keep this because it has a hood with laminar flow to protect against any outside contaminants. So the environment in here is essentially sterile. My long-term goal is to become a professor at a university and teach and also run a successful research program. As far as the area goes, I'm still open. I'm interested, of course, in bone, neuroscience, and stroke, and perhaps stem cell research.